recently came across a thin little volume. You could see here, it's not very big. It's less than 200 pages, with the thought-provoking title, 10 Arguments for Deleting Your Social Media Accounts Right Now. The author, Jaron Lanier, is a tech wizard. In fact, he was named by Wired magazine to be one of the top 25 tech icons of the past 25 years. And so it's a little ironic that this great tech giant is warning us against the dangers of technology. It's either ironic or perfectly understandable, because obviously Lanier is onto something. He's onto something deep about these dangers. And I think if Pirkei Avot did not talk about deleting one's social media accounts, as it surely didn't, there's something about the spirit of Lanier's argument, or arguments really, that really are in all the pages of Pirkei Avot. And let me explain what I mean. If you look here on the back of the book, you see a handy list of these arguments for deleting your social media accounts right now. I'll read just a couple of them. Argument 2, quitting social media is the most finely targeted way to resist the insanity of our times. Argument 4, social media is undermining truth. Argument 5, social media is making what you say meaningless. Argument 6, social media is destroying your capacity for empathy. And finally, my favorite, argument 10, social media hates your soul. I think if you add all these arguments together, you see a major divide in the world between facts and information on the one hand, and something that we call wisdom or chachma on the other hand. The world of social media, the information age, information overload are all ways of saying the same thing. There are too many inputs. There are too many stimuli headed to us to make sense of. We've got discrete facts and information, but we'd lose wisdom in the process. In the process of seeking facts and losing information, seeking information and losing wisdom. There's a wonderful poem by St. Edna Vincent Millay. I just want to read a little section from this poem called Upon This Age. Upon this gifted age, in its dark hour, rains from the sky a meteoric shower of facts that lie unquestioned, uncombined. And it's the problem, it's the danger of facts that are uncombined and unquestioned that the Tanaim, the rabbis of the Mishnah of Pirkei Avot, are so concerned with. And the very first Mishnah of the 4th chapter begins in an almost iconic way. Ezeu chacham, who is truly wise? Halomed mikol adam, the person that learns from every human being. In other words, the Mishnah is inverting our sense. Remember, these were rabbis. These are learned men. And there was a kind of a guild of rabbinic scholars. And what this Mishnah is teaching is don't just look to the people you expect to have wisdom and knowledge, but be open to the possibility that every human being, every person, by virtue perhaps of their divine image within them, has something to offer. Ezeu chacham halomed mikol adam, who is wise, the one that truly understands that there is wisdom to be sought from in every single person. And I think there's another lesson for modernity here in this Mishnah. When we think about this phrase of Ezeu chacham halomed mikol adam, we generally think of every person, every individual, every person on the planet. It's a kind of spatial image of everybody. But I think there's also another meaning. There's one not only of a spatial significance, but of temporal significance. To learn from all human beings, no matter when they lived. In other words, to look at the past as a repository of wisdom, as a source of meaning in your age and your modern age. We are all guilty as moderns of the sin of presentism. The idea that the present world is really all we have. It's all we know, and therefore it's all that should be considered meaningful. It's all that should be considered true. And we know that the great apologist and scholar of Oxford and Cambridge, C.S. Lewis, used to call this modern temptation chronological snobbery, that we tend to think only in our present terms, that we're snobs, we're arrogant when it comes to the wisdom of the past. We dismiss that. We say that that's bygone, that's primitive, that's elementary, that's fundamentalist. All those expressions to distance ourselves from the wisdom of the past. And what the Mishnah here, I think, is also saying, beyond the simple lesson of learning from every human being, is that we should learn from every age as well. From past ages, there's much to learn. There's much to be gleaned. They can teach us much. As G.K. Chesterton, the great Catholic journalist, once said, tradition is the democracy of the dead. The idea of looking back to tradition, looking back to our past, this is the only way to have a true democracy of ideas, where we can look back and say those people count, those elders, those ancestors, they count. Their voice should be heard here in the modern world. That's tradition. That's Masorah. And that's really how Pirkei Avot begins. With Moshe Kibel Torah Misinai, Umasrel Yoshua, that there was a chain of transmission. We don't live in an era where our ancestors are considered primitive. We do, unfortunately, the world around us, the larger culture, wants us to think that. Pirkei Avot teaches us the opposite. And there are two bits of wisdom that I want to turn to within this Mishnah, within this wonderful chapter, that are really twin Mishnayot. They're paired together. They ought to be taught in tandem because they both deal with education, which is so central to this aspirational work of Pirkei Avot, of transmission. Elisha ben Avuya Omer, Halomed Yeled Lamahu Dome Lidiyo Kesuva al Niyar Chadash. If you teach a child, what is that considered comparable to? To writing on a clean piece of paper, writing on a blank slate. And we know that image of the blank slate, the tabula rasa, has a certain place in educational theory dating back to Aristotle, but all the way through Locke and moderns. That's when you teach a child, you're teaching on a blank piece of paper. V'halomed zakein, and if you teach an older person, lamahu dome, what is it considered comparable to? L'diyoy ksuva al niyar machuk. It's as if you've written on a paper that has been scrubbed away, that has been blotted. And the simple teaching, of course, is that young minds are so quick to absorb, like a sponge, we say. And when you teach a young person, it's pure. That excitement, that sense of engagement can be very powerful. The potential in that young child. The great martyr of Warsaw, the Piazetzner Rebbe of Kalanamas Kama Shapiro, called Tinoko Shel Beit Rabban, the children of the schoolyard, the little children who study. He called them the Anpei de Shechina, the face of the Shechina, the very face of God's presence. That's a powerful description of the beauty and meaning of children. There's almost like a theology of childhood that's embedded in this Mishnah. And what's the second Mishnah, the pairing? Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda ish Kfar Bavli Omer, Rabbi Joseph, the son of Yehuda, the man of the town of the little village of the Bavli, Halomed min haktanim lamahu dome. If you learn from a child, if you learn from a young person, what is it considered like? La'ochel anavim kehos v'shosa yayin migito. It's like you're eating unripe grapes and you're drinking wine straight from the vat. Meaning you're getting a pure experience, but it's not cultured. It's not experienced. It's lacking that element of wisdom. It's got energy. It's got vitality, but it's not quite experienced enough in the world. Whereas halomin minak zakenim, if you learn from the older ones, from the ancient ones, from the ones who have more experience, lamahu dome, what is that considered comparable to? La'ochel anavim b'shulos v'shosa yain yashan. It's like eating ripe fruits, ripe grapes, and drinking old wine, where life, the experience of life, has worn its way through this product so that you're getting not just the content, but you're getting context. You're getting not just the learning, you're getting the whole array of experiences with that learning. And so these two Mishnayos really talk to one another in dialogue. They're showing the virtues of the young and the liabilities of the young, the liabilities of the old and the virtues of the old. And of course, this fits in beautifully with the theme that the Mishnah begins with. This chapter begins with Ozei Chacham Halomed Mikol Adam, that we should be learning from old and young. We should be learning from old and young and take those respective virtues. And you as parents and you as children that are out there with us, you should see that this promises an incredible dialogue and an incredible opportunity to learn from each other. Those choice moments, those beautiful, blessed moments where parent and child, mother and father get together with the children. That is when this magic of the pure script on the clean paper and the wine that's mature and seasoned and old meet. And finally, the following Mishnah, I think, says everything that's in our minds as we think how to reconcile these two Mishnayot, these dual teachings, these parallel texts. Rabbi Meir Omer, Al tistakel bekankan, ela b'ma sheyesh bo. Don't look at the container, at the vessel, only look what's in the vessel. Because yesh kankan chadash malay yashan, there is the brand new vessel that's holding an old product. The yashan, and there's the old container, shafilu chadash ein bo, and that there's not even the new in it. Ultimately, we shouldn't look at these categories as static of old and young, adult and child. We should look at the content. We should look at what is going to emerge from this child. What is going to emerge from this adult? Is that a teaching worth heeding? Is that a teaching worth learning from? And that's a way to sort of reconcile, if you will, those two previous Mishnayot. Because we see here that ultimately it's not the externality of the young or the old that matters. It's the content of their character more than the color or the form of their skin. And I think ultimately this circles back to that beginning of the Mishnah of Ezoeu Chacham Halomed Mikol Adam. That wisdom is what Jews seek. We seek it from all people. We know that we have particularity, we have our families, we have our traditions, we have our people. But wisdom comes from every place. If someone thinks that there's Torah amongst the Gentiles, al ta'amin. Don't believe them. Torah is that unique gift, that patrimony of the Jewish people. But chachma b'goyim, wisdom amongst the Gentiles, ta'amin, do believe. There's so much that we can learn from old and young, from ancient and modern, from Jew and Gentile, to make the Jewish people that much stronger, that much more vibrant. And the place to begin, as always, is Pirkei Avot.